Good evening, everyone. Looks like we've got some people coming. It looks like you all found parking spots. Thank you for coming. We've got a great agenda tonight. There's a copy of that agenda on the back table, but just to kind of reference it, we've got a consent agenda for our meeting on April 9th, and then we do have a public hearing, and I suspect we've got some people here for that public hearing. Thank you so much for coming. We look forward to hearing from you. Before we start, I do have a statement that I need to read, and that we read it at the beginning of every Planning Commission meeting. The City of Taylorsville Planning Commission is a citizens board appointed by the City Council. The function of the Planning Commission is to make recommendations to the City Council on proposed zoning maps and text changes, and to approve conditional uses and subdivisions. Planning Commission decisions are based on the general plan, recommendations of the planning staff, written and oral testimony, and other evidence submitted. The first part of the agenda is a consent agenda, which tonight consists of the review and approval of the minutes for the Planning Commission meeting held on April 9th, 2024. If there's a discussion on the consent agenda, please signify, and it will be moved. Well, actually, this is our regular session, so we will handle it first. We would ask that you turn off cell phones during the meeting, and any comments that are made in the public hearing, we ask you to limit it to 2 minutes. And if you're representing a group, 5 minutes. Thank you. So the first item to be heard tonight is our consent agenda for the minutes on April 9th, 2024. Commissioners, we're glad to see you here. Any comments on those meetings? On those minutes, rather. If not, could I ask for a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I would go ahead and make a motion to approve the minutes of our April 9th meeting, 2024.
We have a motion,
I'll second.
and we have a second. All in favor? Well, I'm actually going to ask for a roll call because I know a number of us were not here on April 9th.
Okay. Commissioner Russell?
Aye.
Chair Wilkie?
I'll abstain. I was not here.
Commissioner Wright?
Aye.
Commissioner Quigley?
Aye.
Commissioner Wendell?
Abstaining for my absence.
Commissioner Willardson?
Yes.
And Commissioner Young?
Yes.
Great, thank you. It looks like it passed with a quorum rather. Okay, let's get to our matter tonight. We're going to be talking about what we've got going on 4700 South. We're going to ask Mark McGrath to address us and give us an overview. And after he does, we will have some presentations by our consulting team that's here on this table. Mark.
Thank you very much. As you mentioned, our consultant team is in town.
Can you make sure the mic's on?
Our consultant, yeah, it is on. Our consultant team's in town. I just wanted to introduce the item really quickly before I introduce them. Can I get this? It's weird looking up there and seeing yourself. So just to give you a little bit of background, we talked about this briefly 2 weeks ago, but just for the benefit of the public and to just refresh your memories, just give you a little bit of background about why we're here and what this is we're doing. As everybody knows, Utah and particularly the Wasatch Front is experiencing tremendous growth right now, which has led to a very severe housing shortage and affordable housing crisis. As you know, we are expected over about the next 40 years to add about another 500,000 people, about another 500,000 people to Salt Lake County in particular, and over 2 million people to the combined statistical area, Salt Lake, Ogden, and Provo. So this tremendous growth pattern we're on right now is expected to continue over the next 40 years. And this is not that out of the ordinary, although it seems like it is. But really, over about the last 40 years, we've grown about a half million people also. So from roughly 1980 to 2020, we gained about 500,000 people in Salt Lake County. So really the situation we're in is very similar to the 1980s, with the exception of kind of the canvas we have to work with. This is an aerial photograph of Salt Lake County in the mid-1980s, as you can see there. And what's interesting, get the pointer up here, is kind of what was going on in the county back in the 1980s. You can see this is the I-15 corridor right here, going right down the center of the county. Taylorsville's right here where I-215 bends and goes northbound. But if you look at what's going on in the county, there is an awful lot of open space, a lot of vacant land, a lot of undeveloped farms, a lot of undeveloped green fields. Even along the I-215 corridor through here, through South Jordan and Draper. This is Draper right here, of course. Still a lot of farms, a lot of open space. And even in Taylorsville, as far north as Taylorsville, there's still a lot of open space and vacant land. And even in West Jordan, South Jordan, Bluffdale, Riverton, Harriman essentially isn't even there in the 1980s. But compare that to Salt Lake County in 2022, and the county is almost full now. It is almost fully developed now. There's still a little bit of vacant land here in West Daybreak, kind of the next phase of Daybreak in this area. Still a little bit of open space in Harriman. The Olympia development is proposed somewhere in this area. And a little bit, here along the Ochres. But most of this vacant land here along the Ochre foothills is owned and controlled by Kennecott and Rio Tinto. And they're using that land for buffers from their mining operations, and so most of this land is not developable, at least at this point. So this is a much different canvas than we were working with back in the 1980s when we were getting ready to add another 500,000 people to the county. So Will Rogers kind of summed up our situation in one sentence here. This is a famous quote from Will Rogers, of course. The trouble with land is they're not making it anymore. And that's kind of our dilemma now, because we really have this built-in urban growth boundary with the Ochre Mountains and the Wasatch Mountains and the Great Salt Lake and Utah Lake. We're really constricted. We can't sprawl out into the countryside like a lot of metropolitan areas have done over the past several decades. Which leads a lot of people to think, well, of course, that means we have to go up. We're gonna go up if we're gonna continue to grow and densify the county, which there's a lot of truth to that. But we also just have to be smarter about how we develop our communities and just take better advantage of the land that we have. And having dead spaces like this empty parking lot, this is just the type of thing that we can't do anymore. We have to be smarter about the way we develop our cities. So this housing affordability crisis that we're experiencing right now has led the Utah legislature to become very proactive on this particular issue, because they very much recognize that, one, if we don't address this issue, it's going to have a very bad impact on our economy, our local economy, which of course is really buzzing right now. But it will also have a tremendous impact on future generations, our kids and our grandkids, who it will be very difficult for them to afford housing here if we don't figure out some way to rein this in. So back in the 2020 Utah legislative session, they adopted this House Bill 462, which has now been codified into state code, which is part of a larger affordable housing effort. But this particular part of that bill addressed transportation and the relationship between transportation and housing. So, among other things in this bill, the legislature said a municipality that has a fixed guideway public transit station located within the municipality's boundaries shall, for the station area, one, develop and adopt a station area master plan, and two, adopt appropriate land use regulations to implement the stationary plan. So what that means is any city, any local government that has either light rail or commuter rail, the front runner, or a bus rapid transit system that has fixed guideway, and in terms of bus rapid transit, what that means is if it's in a dedicated right-of-way, we have to create a master plan around those stations that will facilitate more housing. So in Taylorsville, as everybody knows, we're getting ready to embark on the construction of the Mid-Valley Express bus rapid transit system that will run from the Murray Central Station in Murray to the West Valley Central Station in West Valley, mostly along 4700 South and 2700 West. This, as you know, this bus rapid transit system is mostly in existing travel lanes, automotive travel lanes, but there is one section of this route, roughly generally east of Redwood Road to the eastern Atherton Drive, where the system is in a fixed guideway. It's in its own travel lanes, which means that Taylorsville, by law, by code, by state code now, has to create a stationary master plan for those 3 stations. And although we have 15 stations in Taylorsville on the Mid-Valley Express, those 3 are the only 3 that need a master plan to be consistent with state law. And the law goes on to say we have to draw a radius, a quarter of a mile from each one of those stations, and every property that quarter-mile radius touches, that's our study area. That's the area we're going to study. So that translates to this. You can see on the map the quarter-mile radiuses that were drawn from the 3 stations, and every single property those touch has to be in the study area. So, for example, the Meadowbrook Golf Course on the top of this slide, although it just kind of touches, you know, a tiny corner of the Meadowbrook Golf Course, it's an area that we have to consider. But the statute does state that every place within the study area doesn't have to be applicable to this master plan. So there are areas, and our consultants will talk in greater detail about this, so there are areas within this blue area that we've deemed aren't appropriate for change within the study area, the golf course being one of them. The statute goes on to identify the objectives of the statute. So 1, the state wants to see us increase the availability and affordability of housing, including moderate income housing. 2, promote sustainable environmental conditions. So I think that mostly translates to getting people out of their cars as much as we possibly can, promoting walking, bicycling, and especially mass transit. Number 3, enhancing access to opportunities. That means access to education, access to employment, and so on. And then number 4, another key item here is increasing transportation choices and connections. We want to have an appropriate land use / transportation connection. So putting higher density residential development in close proximity to mass transit is just good public policy. And the state is very serious about this. Not only did the legislature adopt this 462, which is now, as I say, part of the state code, the governor is also in full support of promoting more residential development in the state, and especially the Wasatch Front, where we're experiencing the most profound housing shortages. This is an interesting article from October 2023 covering a press conference by the governor where he's quoted as saying, there are some cities out there that think, oh yeah, everyone else, we're unique, we're different, meaning those cities out there who are saying, well, we're a low-density community, this shouldn't impact us, we're an agrarian community, we're a rural community, we're unique. The governor is coming out and saying, no, you're not unique. He says, no, you're not unique and you're not different. You have to find more supply and you have to do it quicker. So the governor is saying, we have to build more housing in this state and in this region. Otherwise, it's going to kill our economy, and it's going to have a tremendous impact on the residents of this region. And then as we talked about 2 weeks ago, this is also part of this 3% strategy that we're going to address in our new general plan. And essentially what the 3% strategy is that we recognize there's going to be significant growth, not only in the region, but also in Taylorsville. But in survey after survey with our residents, we hear that we don't want to see our single-family neighborhoods impacted by this growth. We want to maintain the integrity and the identity of our single-family neighborhoods. So if we are to facilitate growth, we want to do it in just a handful of places that it makes sense, putting it next to mass transit and in other places where it makes the most sense. So this area we're going to talk about tonight is one of those 3% areas where one of those targeted areas where we think that growth and new development makes the most sense in higher density development. So with that, are there any questions for me before I introduce our team? Okay, well, thank you very much. Let me turn the time over to Robert and Bob, our two primary consultants on this, and I'll let you guys introduce your team. We've also assembled a team of national experts that have been working on this. But also, I'll just turn the time over to Rob and Bob, and if you have any questions after the presentation.
Thank you.
So we're switching these over real quick. I'll just say,
Yeah, yeah.
this is working.
Yeah, just as a note, as you're getting that, we do have a public meeting. It's not a Zoom meeting, so they won't be able to ask questions from the meeting, but whenever we speak, we got to make sure we speak into the microphone, so it goes out to that public meeting. Welcome, Robert. Thank you.
Thank you. We're excited to be here tonight, and let's see. I got the same effect. There we go. Thank you. So our team, Rob Weaver, KGRW and Associates, architects and planners, and we've been working with Taylorsville in the past on other projects, and so we're excited to be working on this one as part of the team. Bob Northfield, BCT Architects, planning as well, and he's going to present a lot of the specific planning as we get later into the presentation as well. Aaron Talkington from RCL Co. And Aaron has provides us with real estate, economic analysis, and strategies for how to achieve what we're talking about this evening. Andy Hubbard from Great Basin Engineering. And so you can imagine that development of this scale over time involves infrastructure, water and sewer and roads and infrastructure. Also not here tonight, but Wes Guckert from the traffic group. Transportation is also a major component of this study area. So we'll hear from them in a few minutes here. So going into the presentation, one thing I wanted to also just say in terms of the process. So where are we today? So we started, it's a 4-part process to this planning study. The first part, what we called phase 1, was information gathering. We were looking at talking to stakeholders, property owners, local developers, UTA, UDOT, and other entities. And so trying to gather information, assess the existing conditions, and see what, just wait a second here, yeah. So, so really kind of gathering and seeing, okay, what are the existing conditions, what are the advantages and opportunities, what are the constraints? And we had a public meeting here in July. I recognize some of the faces, and so it's good to see you guys again. And so just gathering input. From that phase 1, we moved into phase 2, which was initial master planning ideas. So we started to look at very broad arrangements of what might make sense from a planning. What are some of the big ideas? And we'll be talking about those as we get into more detail. That rolled into phase 3 as we worked pretty closely with city staff and UTA WFRC as well. And so phase 3 was kind of more refining that master plan. That's where we find ourselves this evening, is at the end of that phase 3. We'll be gathering obviously more feedback tonight. Phase 4 is really putting it together into implementation plan. And that is, how do we achieve what we're hoping to achieve? Now, a couple caveats I would say before we get into the presentation. The land is privately held. So, in terms of, this is a vision for what this area could be. We don't have control. No one has control over exactly how it plays out. So this is a vision guiding as over time properties redevelop. And as they redevelop, that there's a plan in place that will reinforce these objectives that we're trying to achieve. So it's not a heavy-handed that this is going to happen day 1, day 2. We don't know because it'll be up to individual property owners. But having a plan that everyone's moving towards will help us achieve this over time. So with that, let's go into the... So we've already introduced the team, and so I will move through this. Mark has also talked about the state objectives. I'll just briefly say that in terms of like the 4 objectives, I think we're excited to discuss this evening in terms of increasing availability and affordability of housing. This plan allows for the growth to occur targeted in the area with a variety of housing types. You have increased affordability as well as diversity of population and different housing types. So we're excited to talk about that. The sustainable environmental practices, water conservation, air quality, et cetera. That can take a number of forms. Certainly transportation is part of it, but also getting people outside. You'll see that the green and public park that we are proposing as part of the plan, we're very excited about how it can encourage exercise activity, other modes of transportation that get people outdoors, and from a social connection standpoint as well. Number 3, enhancing access to opportunity, access to jobs, shopping, education, et cetera, by creating a mixed-use, thriving community. So a lot of it is housing-based, but we're going to talk about retail opportunities. There's an office park, obviously, that's part Sorensen Office Park that's already part of this area. So there's an employment base, and how do we just integrate all that? Right now, this area is very segmented between the Expressway, between north and south, a lot of walled communities. And so how do you connect the community both in a north-south direction as well as an east and west direction? So, and then the 4th one is increase transportation choices and connectivity, and again, walking, biking, other modes of transportation. Obviously, the BRT station is the impetus for the study in terms of being able to jump onto the BRT and get elsewhere around the community without having to rely on the automobile. And these are just, we won't go into detail, but there are required components of the stationary plan, so we're working very closely with WFRC, the Wasatch Front Regional Council, and as well as the city and other organizations to make sure that we're going to hit all the state requirements. In addition, and I won't go into these in detail, but the city has additional goals that, they're not looking to just achieve the minimum state requirements, but what do we do to really make it a quality neighborhood that thrives? And so a little more detail that we've been studying with the city as well. And you've seen this slide before. And again, there will be areas that the state designates kind of as a category, areas of stability that there might not be a whole lot of change to. And then there's areas where there's opportunities that over time that could redevelop. And at this point, we're going to talk about some of the economic features, so I'm going to have Aaron come and talk.
Hi, good evening. We've already spent some time talking about the growing population. I just wanted to start by kind of reflecting that in housing demand and thinking about, just how significant the housing demand in the Wasatch Front may be over the next several decades as we think about that. And so, that's one of the broader goals and thoughts underlying our analysis, is thinking about how this area does their part, and also, how this can contribute to the community and not just be a burden. And we've talked a little bit about, how we think about the area today and understanding the existing demographics and economic conditions and incomes. I think as Mark's presentation showed really well, this is an area that, has built a lot of their land and has opportunities to build more on some areas that maybe are used for other things today, and that'll happen over time. And you can really see that, as we look at it, there's been, redevelopment and infill that's happened on I-15 and in some of the communities closer to I-15, as well as in those further out suburban areas of the county. And Taylorsville's a little bit in the middle today. Our expectation is that over time, Taylorsville is an increasingly desirable area for more people to live. And so when there are opportunities for there to be housing growth, there will be a desire for more people to move here. And we'll just go through a little bit of an overview of how we think about the different types of products and the different types of land uses that might be part of this plan. Obviously, one of the major things that you've seen built in the county over the last decade, and especially probably over the last 5 years, is multifamily housing. There's a lot of different forms of multifamily housing, and when you look at the city of Taylorsville, it's mostly, older garden-style apartments, so, 2-3 stories, maybe 4 in some places, surface parked, lots of individual buildings. And so when you look at what's been built outside of Taylorsville recently, when you think about what developers are building in other areas, it's a little bit denser than that. And so our expectation is that, product will continue to evolve in this area. If somebody was going to approve or propose a new apartment building today, it would probably be a 4 or 5 story building, maybe with a mix of surface parking and some other configurations to try to help with the density. But still a very, accessible format. And, as things move forward, you might start to see some higher density products more similar to what you're seeing around some of the front runner, the track stations, closer to I-15. But there's really been limited supply in Taylorsville, and we think there's a huge opportunity. And that's the same story on the for sale housing side. While there's been a lot more right outside of your city boundaries, and prices have certainly gone up in this city as well as across cities in the entire Salt Lake County and across the country, really. Taylorsville is still relatively affordable compared to other areas in the county, even if it doesn't feel that way to many individuals. And that's a big opportunity to be able to provide new housing that serves people across a pretty wide variety of price points and incomes and affordability levels. One of the things that we see is there's been a lot of development just outside of the city's boundaries. And so, there's clear demand and clear opportunities if there were sites available for people to infill with things like townhomes or high density single family homes on small lots or small scale condo projects. When we think about the retail opportunity, there's a lot of retail in Taylorsville today and in the areas surrounding it. And in many ways, the community today is fairly well served. When we think about the retail opportunity for this study area, we primarily are thinking about retail that will serve the neighborhood that's nearby, people that could walk there or bike there, as well as retail that will serve growth that happens in that community. And so to be able to add significant amounts of retail, especially something that might have a grocery store or other neighborhood services, food and beverage, we're really thinking about that being paired with the housing growth in this location. We think that the housing growth and the household growth is what's going to drive the demand for additional retail here. We've talked a little bit about employment, and there's a little bit of employment in the area today. When we think about office, so 2, 3, 4 story commercial office buildings where you might have multiple tenants, the office market is really weak. And you guys have probably read some of that in the news and seen it locally and nationally, that people don't have to go into the office as much, so that's really producing some office buildings that are pretty vacant. And we see that in the market here. It's pretty consistent with trends across the county. And so our expectation is that there's not going to be a lot of new office in this plan. Maybe there would be some local serving office, some professional office, some medical, but there isn't a huge opportunity to attract significant new professional employment in this location. And so we've summarized some of these things, which I'm not expecting you to read off of the screen, but you'll see in the plan, thinking about some of these opportunities and challenges for different types of development to inform the land uses and the product types that you'll see within the plan that our team is sharing. And so there's a lot of things where there's a really strong market opportunity today. You could, if you had land, somebody would build single family housing on it in a minute, right? That's probably not surprising. Is that a good fit with the station area plan to build really large lot single family homes? Probably not. And so we've been trying to balance this question of what is there a good market opportunity for with what's a really good fit to achieve the goals of a station area plan. And so you can see that, townhomes and other types of for sale attached have a really strong market opportunity and are a good fit today. Condos, I think condos that look and feel more like townhomes have some opportunity, and we've kind of thought about that as part of the for sale attached demand. Large condo buildings like you'd see in downtown are probably not appropriate in this context and not viable. Lots of different types of rental product, apartments, multifamily buildings, maybe attached and townhome rentals like you're seeing in some other areas nearby, and some neighborhood retail demand that grows over time. And so those are the core components of the program that our planning team has been playing with as they think about the different types of scenarios that belong in these station areas. And we've talked about this product continuum. There's a lot of housing in this area today that looks like the left side of this spectrum. The market today wants to build things that kind of look more like what you see, in Daybreak or South Jordan or Harriman. So a little bit denser, but not super dense like the right side. And so I think our job is to set a long-term vision for this area that allows things to evolve over time as the market can support it. And just to give you a quick preview of where we think we're headed in phase 4, I think this leads to the idea that some of the economic development strategies are going to be about how do you help people begin to evolve the market. And so one of those options is to think about, some sort of successful demonstration project that can really help to demonstrate what new development could achieve if it was built here, since there aren't very many examples on the ground in this location today. And that might take some help from the city or some help from the RDA and some improvements of the tools that the RDA has available. It might also take the form of talking about larger scale strategies like HTRZ, which is a overall county and very competitive program to be able to access, but really does change the economics for developers. And so, we're trying to think about these things both in the buckets of near-term strategies and long-term strategies, given that this is a really great long-term vision and an appropriate long-term vision for how these station areas might evolve. But the individual product types and the levels of densities are not necessarily what the market's going to go build tomorrow, because as some of my colleagues have shared, it's not like there's a site tomorrow that we know is ready to go and ready to turn over, because these are privately owned sites. And so this is about how we set the stage, and you can expect to hear more about these strategies when we come back later with phase 4. And I will turn it over to Corey.
Madam Chair, if I could just make a quick
Yes.
comment. So this presentation is available on the city's website if anybody wants to go on and access it. And there's a lot of information. So if you go to the Planning Commission portion of the city's webpage, this PDF is available. So
Great. Thank you, Mr. Swan.
Good evening. So as we took a look at the area that was to be serviced here, our first thing was to look at the current zoning. The area is covered by varied zones, anywhere from the research park from Sorensen to a little bit of limited commercial to multifamily and single family housing and open space across the area, all of which are unique and have the ability to evolve as the area develops. So currently the utilities that service the area, we looked at those with the service provider, Taylorsville Benyon. Generally, there's enough infrastructure here, but and there's some extra capacity in these utilities, especially the sewer and the water. But as this evolves and changes, those and grows, there'll be certain triggers that will require additional infrastructure to be either upgraded or added for sewer and water. Stormwater is always a big issue, and as we look at stormwater, we want to try and incorporate some of those into the design. We're going to try and use the stormwater to our advantage in this area, and we can talk about that a little bit more. But by restricting flows and holding it on sites and trying to use that to the best of our ability, we can maximize what we've got there in the way of resources.
So the three stations again, so the one that's on the left is 1300 West, and to the north of that is a single-family neighborhood, probably unlikely to change much in character. To the south is Four Lakes Golf Course, and so those are kind of the two major components related to 1300, which is on the left there. The center one, Atherton, there's a mix of office to the northeast of it, the manufactured home community pretty much to the south, Majestic Meadows, and an assortment of other buildings along there. The riverboat station is to the right. There's, again, Monte Vista, which is to the southeast. Further to the southeast, Bridgeside Landing. And to the farther to the south is Majestic Oaks Manufactured Home Community. To the north of it, in addition to Sorensen Research Park, there's some other office buildings and La Maison along the Jordan River Parkway. As we looked at the existing site, you can see that there's a number of, let's say, large green areas. So between the golf course is a very green, lots of existing mature trees, Four Lakes as well. And each of the manufactured home communities have a central green area with some, also some mature trees, and the golf course, Meadowbrook up to the north, obviously is another large green area, and then the Jordan River Parkway to the east. So there's some significant natural resources in this area that we were looking to take advantage of and enhance. So some part of what you'll hear on the plan is in exchange for higher density in certain areas around the BRT stations, we're enhancing and connecting from a green space standpoint as well, and increasing park space and encouraging the use of the outdoors. From a transportation standpoint, the large, yellow east-west is 4700, and then you see kind of a U-shape of Atherton coming around. We see Atherton being an important roadway, and how that street section develops to encourage walkability, activity, community. That's going to be a major component of this plan. Also, you see the power lines running north-south. And so you can see that the existing conditions, there are resources within there. They all are fairly compartmentalized. The golf course is off to the west. The manufactured home communities are all walled communities. 4700 is a barrier between north and south. The power lines, there's really, except for Atherton and Lavoie, there isn't a lot of crossing that occurs there. And then there's also a lot of surface parking. And if you go through, you'll see lots of opportunity that we don't necessarily need all of that surface parking. And so there's opportunity for redevelopment there as well.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
can I ask a quick question?
Yes, please.
What's the dotted arc with the sun on one side and the sun on the other?
Yes, okay, thank you. So that's sunrise to sunset and coming from the east around the south and to the west from a solar orientation standpoint. That would really come into play more as specific sites are developed in terms of orientations of buildings and having daylight. Thank you for the question, yeah. So the proposed green network, one of the things that we're really excited about is the opportunity to connect Jordan River Parkway to the entire surrounding neighborhood. That's going to happen a couple ways. One way is as part of UDOT's project with putting in the BRT stations, the northern edge of Taylorsville Expressway will have a continuation of that wider hiker-biker throughway that will connect into Taylorsville towards Redwood. And so that's one mechanism. But another thing that we were excited about was using the existing green spaces of the hubs of the manufactured home communities, as well as Four Lakes having those natural features that, again, we don't know when they'll turn it over, but if they do, there's an idea of like stringing these pearls together and having a linear park so that all the way from Four Lakes all the way to Jordan River Parkway could be this green belt. And then there's other parks you can see on the screen that are smaller neighborhood parks. So you have green areas that are around local communities. They tie into this linear park, and there's opportunities for biking, recreation, passive areas, areas that would be more natural in terms of vegetation versus manicured. And so there'd be a mix of things there. Also an opportunity for stormwater management because of, again, you're exchanging some denser areas for housing and other developments, but you're offsetting it with increased green areas. So for instance, if Four Lakes were to redevelop someday, we think it would be very cool that, yes, you might have more intense development closer to the 1300 BRT station, which makes sense, but you're maybe preserving the perimeter of the site, some of the golf holes, and in terms of the landscaping, the mature trees, the lakes, and so there would be a legacy aspect of the green space, even if it were to redevelop someday. And the same thing for the manufactured home parcels as well, that there would be some legacy of the green space and how that all ties together. From a pedestrian bike path standpoint, again, the linear park would be this great east-west connector that would have north-south connections in terms of individual neighborhoods. Developing the street section in terms of Atherton to be pedestrian-friendly would also be an important part of that. And this is looking at the street section for the Expressway with the BRT lanes in the middle. To the left side would be the extension of the Jordan River Trailway along the north side of it, and lots of landscaping being proposed as part of this project, just independent of the rest of the station area plan, the development of the 4700 corridor. And then the road network, you can see, again, 4700 being the main throughway east-west. You have in blue Atherton, which brings people to the BRT stations themselves, two of the three. And then 1175, which is running north-south, the gray one that's between the two circles there. That is going to evolve over time. It's not a safe intersection as it exists now. And so part of the idea is as areas develop in the road networks that could get you over to the signalized intersections where the BRT stations are, either at Atherton or 1300. And then having a street system that, again, encourages connectivity. You see crossing across the power lines is not just Atherton, but there's a connection between neighborhoods because the streets continue through. And this led to looking at a diversity of uses, not just housing. There are a variety of housing, but institutional, office, and retail. And I'm going to have Bob come up and present the plan in more detail.
Good evening. How are you? So Rob has just kind of talked about the homework and the analysis that went into some of the overlining defining principles of what we're trying to get done with this master plan. The master plan is aspirational, but it's achievable. It'll take approximately 5 to up to 25 years to happen. A master plan at its heart is really a framework to guide future development that will be the benefit to the community and surrounding neighborhoods and stuff. It's very much like zoning. Zoning is meant to protect people, their individual property rights, and the health and welfare of everything as well. So if we can get back to the screen. The land use plan helps define what we're going to put in where, but there's a couple of principles we want to go over with real quick. The master plan is informed by the community interaction and data-driven. We've got economic analysis by Erin and her company. We've been here before talking to a lot of the people in this room, sharing some different ideas about it. So this is something that we work very hard to figure out and look for plenty of precedents to help figure out a great sustainable solution for the whole entire neighborhood. There's an indication to amenitize the 3 station area plans and to add more civic uses. Civic uses such as churches, schools, libraries, YMCAs, build community. And that's at the heart of what we're trying to do, is we're trying to build these 3 station area plans into a larger community that will foster connectivity and things. Rob mentioned diversity of residential product, from rent to own to lower density to higher density. Today will also be about appropriate density. How much density do we want to encourage? The more density we have, it will be more attainable housing. So we can have a product that people can start out their housing careers in. They can move up, they can rent, and people can gray out at different areas and age within the communities and things like that as well. One of the important things is to maintain and support employment centers such as Sorensen. So in Sorensen Park, we're going to look to amenitize that to make people want to come back to those office buildings by adding food and beverage, retail, things that are within walking distance that we want to make them come back. Build upon the existing green network. We've got all these huge natural assets, so let's go ahead and use them and build upon them and build a lot more open space. Open space has a wonderful attributes towards people's health, viability, exercise, programming, all these other things like that. But really, it's all about recognizing areas of stability, because there's certain parts of the master plan that we think are working pretty well, as some of these single-family neighborhoods are. And there's other areas that will get redeveloped over time. So the idea is to have a game plan for when they do come online. We can guide that process and that whole format and stuff. So this is the specific master plan that shows a combination of buildings, parks, and this connective tissues of a linear park that runs east to west that helps to unite the whole master plan. So basically the premise is around the station area plans, you're going to have the BRT station, and you're going to have rings of density that will increase the closer they are to the BRT station, and then they'll gradually step down to the perimeter of that and then match the adjacent development, whether it's single family homes or other things that are around it. We want to put similar uses against new uses so that we have compatibility, so that we have scale, character, things that build upon the neighborhood and things. So with that, we'll kind of hop into the first one, which is the 1300 West program. This is currently under single ownership, which makes it a unique parcel. The stuff to the north, the multifamily, single family, here is area of stability, is doing great. We're doing a couple things there to promote walkability to the BRT station, which is located in the median of Taylorsville. There'll be pedestrian accessibility to the initial phase of the whole thing, so that these residents can walk to the BRT station and take advantage of it. And then right around the very edge of the BRT station, we're proposing higher density with a podium type of product, which would be approximately 5-story residential multifamily that's located with structured parking below. The density of these tend to be a little bit higher. The parking's concealed. The buildings come down to the ground. In the base of those buildings, we have amenities, we have retail, we have things which is called retail amenities that are attributes that help build the neighborhood. It might be cafes and what have you. They're going to ring the area immediately around the station, maybe in the corner of this building, this Central Park building, and right here. We're not looking to add large swaths of retail. We don't think that that's appropriate for this. We want more of this amenity kind of idea. The other thing, too, in this particular course is to take advantage of this. Kind of acts as a de facto park right now, and its current use is the golf course. So we've set up a very long linear progression that runs from the Expressway south that takes advantage of some of these strands of mature trees and geometries that help bring people down south into the project. So we'll start off with a 5-story product multifamily adjacent to the Expressway. We'll have limited vehicular access on and off the Expressway, and we'll have lots of porosity along the Expressway with generous setbacks of approximately 60 feet. So we have some great landscape buffers up against the Expressway so that residents can walk along there on the north and south sides, and we have circulation points for pedestrians that kind of move between the buildings. They're smaller scale blocks developments and things that kind of give a nice scale to things, and that they're easily feasible and achievable. As we move away from the expressway, we start to introduce a different type of product that surrounds this kind of linear park. The middle of the park is programmed space. That could be community agricultural plots. It could be programming for yoga and different activities. But it's really meant to be the hub of the neighborhood. We have probably 4-story garden apartment and stacked flats that have structured parking below. And then immediately adjacent to that, we work our way down to kind of a 3-story product, which are kind of like walk-up garden apartments that have large landscape areas or surface parked. And then as we move towards the edge, we're maintaining these 4 water features and a lot of the existing mature tree landscaping through a series of trails and networks that people can walk and bike through. And then we end up with a townhome type of product at the very edge of it. These are 3 stories, which matches the intensity and the scale of the surrounding residential single-family units and some of the multifamily, which is over up to the west and over into the east. We also are looking at opportunities to connect through on a very limited basis to the Murraysville-Taylorsville Road down to the south, but basically also look to also activate the streets. Right now, Four Lakes doesn't really activate 1175, so we're looking at adding lower scale townhomes that front 1175 and get that more of a street presence. The green linear park, which is the connective tissue of the master plan, runs from the east to the west, and that kind of comes and terminates into this large green plaza area, which can be used for recreation, both active and passive. So majority of this site is owned by single ownership. We do have a small parcel, and we've also kind of developed a master plan that some of this could happen all at the same time, or other parcels could happen at a later date as well. To the north, we don't see a great deal of change. We would encourage the adoption of a more progressive accessory dwelling unit policy, which could allow those people to maybe densify their property very slight, but still be in character with the existing residential neighborhood and things to support its growth. The middle station area plan is called Atherton West, which is at the intersection right here between Atherton and the Expressway. It's anchored on 4 corners. 3 of those corners are anchored by this higher density product, which is approximately 5 stories tall, which has the structured parking within the podium of it, and again has great connectivity, the 60-foot buffer. You can see these buildings aren't a wall along the expressway. They're set back. There's plenty of vistas. There's plenty of ins and outs to articulate the buildings, both in setbacks as well as the heights of them, to give some variety and interest to it. And then we also are looking to do complete streets. Atherton Drive we see as one of the key streets that we would change the streetscape in the street section, which I'll show you in a little bit later. And that serves as kind of more of a true complete street, which is an important environmental principle that can work off the transit oriented development principles of the BRT and things. In the upper northeast quadrant, we're leaving some of the existing areas of employment. Some of the industrial buildings and things are working quite well. They have a lot of parking. So we're looking to selectively look for opportunities where we can add infill development while still allowing sufficient parking for those uses, but look at adding additional residential opportunities that can front maybe Meadowbrooks Golf Course. This would be the addition of stack flats or 3-story townhomes that would be clusters of about 50 to 60 units each that would take advantage of these courses and then offer connectivity back down to the expressway, as well as adding in select locations new buildings that would amenitize the northern side of the expressway by adding small 10,000 square foot buildings that might have retail uses, cafes, restaurants that the office people can walk to and residents can walk to kind of have more of an amenitized environment. Over on the left, on the western side of it, we're looking at the potential addition of different types of units that might be of a higher density, as well as stepping those things down into clustered townhome, which are 3 stories tall, to increase the density but still be respectful of the single-family residences below. Once we get below Atherton, we're building upon the existing green network of mature trees that exist today in the manufactured home parks, and then connecting this thing through east and west to connect across and really link these separate communities. We think that's really important, both on the north and the south side of the expressway, as well as east to west. We're showing a road network that crosses underneath the transmission lines, as well as some walkability between them all. Here again, stepping down from the higher density product, which is between the Expressway and Atherton. Once we get south of Atherton, we start to step down to 3-story units, and eventually step down to clusters of townhomes and stack flats that match the density of the adjacent single-family residential units as well. The far east station is Riverboat Road, which has the BRT station in the very middle of it. Here again, we're leaving a lot of the assets of the Source and Office Park and looking at opportunities where we can infill development, where we have these large parking lots that are underutilized. We're not in the parking business, we're in the business of making places and spaces for people and communities. So we're suggesting that they look at adding selective multifamily rental properties of approximately 5 stories tall with a structured parking below. We would have retail facing the Expressway to add visual interest and also amenitize it. This could be food components that the office workers could walk to during lunch as well. And then we're also looking at some of these areas up and adding some smaller single-story office buildings or some medical clinics and things that could facilitate community care and needs to it as well. That the Maison is an area of stability. We don't see big changes there with its adjacency and proximity to the Jordan River Parkway. And then getting on the southern side of the Expressway, there is some existing retail uses over in this location. So we see further adding that with more of this amenity retail, the addition of maybe a small grocery store in the 15 to 20,000 square foot range that could be an amenity to the residents that are living and working down here now. There's a lot of people that we're forecasting to move in this area. They're going to need the basics of neighborhoods, places to shop, places to dine, and things like that will build character and build amenities they can all walk to. As we get on the other side of Atherton, we start to step down the density, and you can see how this green connective linear park connects through down to the Jordan River Parkway, snakes its way kind of down another existing area of nature with existing trees that we're building upon that move from east to west that connects into the other one over here. And then within these neighborhoods, each neighborhood has its own subparks and areas of recreation. So a collection of neighborhoods within neighborhoods adjacent that connect to other neighborhoods. It's not a large monolithic development. It's a series of developments that kind of form this community and things. We've also thought about how this proposed street network ties back into the Jordan River Parkway, so we have access and LA points that can get people to that through different points and through the neighborhoods to build upon the existing trail and network of events we have going on. So these are the types of product that we see as the higher density that would ring adjacent to the Expressway. These buildings are typically about 5 stories. This might be a courtyard type of element that would have configurations of space that would add visual interest as you're driving by on the Expressway. They would be a combination of ranging and vertical stories from 4 to 6, maybe 5 being the average. They would conceal the parking. The buildings would come all the way down to the ground. It's really important to have great streets and a great street network, including complete streets, plazas. Here we'd be looking for the best practices of urban design, of placement of the buildings, the articulation of the landscaping, screening of service areas. This promotes great walkability in neighborhoods, so we can be very sensitive about that. So we see this working very well. This is a structured parking product with higher densities. A variation of this would be the same product of 5 or 4 stories that are surface parked that would have a little bit more parking lots associated with and things. The next kind of level down on the density spectrum is what's called stacked flats. These are a series of units that are horizontally divided that resemble almost like large estates and large villas and things. And then this has a great scale that's similar in scale to some of the surrounding residential properties and stuff. 3 to 4 stories, individual character to it that helps build and amenitize the neighborhoods, which we think is very, very appropriate for it. Townhouses, we think, are another great example. Some of these images are from Daybreak, where they have fairly dense properties. They range anywhere from 16 to 20 units per acre. But then they also have these small pocket parks interspersed between it, so you get a variety of spaces while getting in units. Attainable housing is one of the crises that Mark spoke about earlier. So if we have this variety of products, we think that people are going to be able to attain home ownership within Taylorsville through this different variety of different uses and things. The connective tissue we talk about of connecting the neighborhoods east to west, north to south, we think it's really important. So we're essentially trading increase in density with the addition of open space and amenities for the neighborhoods. And these are just some different examples of it. These are spaces that foster placemaking, bring community together. They're parks, they're active, passive, they're highly programmed in other areas to offer festivities and actions and stuff. This is some examples in Daybreak. You can see there's a variety of them for more manicured facilities to more of a natural kind of state to it. Open space has many benefits to great communities. It's one of the number one attributes that people look for when they move into places besides schools, is open space so they can recreate, participate in other activities and things. You've got plenty of these already. This is an example of Liberty Park, very green, very lush. We're also, as Andy mentioned, looking to incorporate stormwater management in these large open areas. So maybe there's some opportunities where we can hold stormwater and have green recreation areas adjacent to ponds and water features. Other things that we can be smart, use best practices. Jordan Park is a wonderful thing we can build upon. Our connectivity to it from an east to west perspective where more people can enjoy it and bike over to it. Part of that is looking at the street sections. We really want to put the roads on a diet where we can. We're going to accommodate all the traffic on the Expressway, move it through efficiently, have a reduction in traffic potentially because of the BRT stations. But on these major neighborhood roads, you'll see a plan on the upper portion and a section through the lower portion where these could be like Lavoie roads, just that parallel the Expressway, where we'd be looking to have maybe 2-lane roads, not of huge width, something that's more manageable. The trend now is to really put people first, bikes second, and cars last. There's a kind of a hierarchy of things we're looking to do. So in these street sections, we'll put the roads on a diet, maybe have parallel parking on both sides that typically slows down traffic, a focus on two-way streets wherever possible. And then when we look at the street edges, we have a planting strip adjacent to the curb. We have at least a 5-foot sidewalk so people feel comfortable walking on the sidewalks away from the road. And then we have a buffer which are up against the residential neighborhoods, or we have enhanced seating, outdoor cafes at the retail districts. When we move into more of the arterial road like Atherton Drive and other larger roads, we're looking to increase the right-of-way to promote bikeability and walkability. So some of those things might be adding, take on Atherton, a central median that might have some landscaping on it, get rid of the left and right turn lanes that are dedicated and do more greenery in the very middle of it. We're talking about also separating the bike trails, a designated bike trail in these larger roads that are separated by a barrier or a planting strip, and then have larger landscaping at the edge with those planting strips. And then tight setbacks up against the buildings where outdoor seating and cafe uses where the retail districts are. Then as we move into the typical neighborhood streets, we're really looking at two-way roads, maybe with parking on one side. Here again, the planting strips that protect the pedestrians. The bikes are probably going to be on these smaller streets and share it with the cars. And then we'll have the sidewalks and the setbacks to the buildings and all the residential houses. And then getting down into kind of like what happens in front of the stacked flats or the townhomes, where we're going to have a combination of two-way streets up against sidewalks and with some parking that's immediately adjacent to the buildings and the units. So this kind of gets us back to the proposed land uses that Rob talked about. This is basically the guiding principle of the increased density around the station area plan, the introduction of the purple, which are civic and commercial uses, which help build community, supporting the office uses in the areas of employment, and then adding retail amenities in these areas of red, which are adjacent to the BRT stations or amenitizing these other areas. These are some of the things that we look at that we think will reach an appropriate density, which we think will protect people's existing properties, areas of stability, but also complement the community and things. And that concludes it.
Great, thank you very much. So we've had some really good presentations. I turn to my colleagues on the commission and see what questions we have.
Commissioner Wilkie?
Yes, Commissioner.
I have a whole bunch of questions. I don't know if it'd be good to do those now, or if it would be good to do that after the public comment. I'm happy to do them now, but whatever you think's best.
I suspect if we do them now, it may answer some of the questions that our public will have, so I would recommend that we do them now.
Okay. If I may.
Yes, please, Commissioner Wright.
So, question for the design team and for the city. First of all, if I could take a moment, I'd like to offer a vote of confidence for the city, for Mark's pushing this kind of effort forward, for the city engaging in it. And I'd also like to make acknowledgement that this is an interesting effort taking place. In the state of Utah, we pride ourselves in being a conservative state. The housing bills that are coming to us right now are very progressive. And in my mind, I think the balancing act that is being performed right now by the planning staff, by the group here, by Mark McGrath is really commendable, because you're trying to balance between the forces of the reality of Taylorsville, which is a conservative city, with a progressive type of attitude from the state that doesn't quite believe it's progressive, but is doing so right now. I think this is an amazing activity that you're participating in right now. So, off of that bandwagon right there, a couple of the questions there. I want to emphasize the importance. We've talked about it. I don't see the details for it. Maybe they're forthcoming, and that's okay. But if I could emphasize, and Don Quigley's going to be sick of me saying this kind of stuff, but if I could emphasize and emphasize and emphasize again the importance of tying into that river and making it an important place. We've shown some high-level plans for that, but if we're able to really tie into that and make this development, and I realize it's pie in the sky and there are a whole bunch of other things that need to take place, but if just a little component of this plan takes place, if we could tie into that river, that would be a huge win for this project. So I would be asking that. On slide 25, this is the BRT. What is the travel speed of the road along there? What's the planned travel speed there?
The travel speed of the BRT or the automotive travel speed?
Automotive, yeah.
I believe it's 50 miles an hour.
Okay.
Yeah.
How can we bring that down?
That's as you know, it's a state facility, and so ultimately the speed limit is up to UDOT. I don't know, do you have anything to add to that, Wayne?
Just a quick comment. I think the construction of the BRT and reconfiguring the right-of-way and how that's used is going to slow traffic quite a bit, to where if you've got 2 dedicated bus lanes, sidewalks on both sides, trails, landscaping, that's going to help the driver feel like it's not a freeway and that it's a more urban street. So I think the design in of itself will help reduce the speed, probably to the indicated speed limit, if not a little bit lower. So
aspirationally, we think with the construction it'll bring it down. How can we bring it down? Is there a way to go to UDOT and say, hey, we need a community street here, we need a special street? How can we make that work?
So if I may, so you would have to request a warrant study from UDOT that would go through and take a look at if there's characteristics of the road that has changed, if there are additional aggravating circumstances that would warrant a change in the speed. I think it's, as Jim has stated, the very fact that the construction of the BRT and the change in the road profile and the amenities will bring that down automatically. But once that happens, I believe that a warrant study would be authorized and to see what that speed would really be.
Okay. Thank you. I wonder if I could ask the question of Mark. You talked about the timing of it early on in your presentation. Was that just to get these small area plans implemented, or was that something more than that?
Well, one of the provisions of this statute says that the BRT can't get up and running. It can't operate until we have this plan adopted and certified. So, you know, there's some wiggle room there. It's the BRT isn't projected to be open for approximately 2 years, and so we have a little bit of wiggle room there. But we wanted to make sure we were proactive to make sure this plan got done on time, because after as long as we've spent getting this BRT up and going, we don't want any sort of delay at the end of this process. So, and there are still a number of steps, as you know, that need to take place to get this plan officially adopted. Tonight, as I mentioned in my staff report, we're not asking for a motion or a recommendation from the Planning Commission to the City Council. We don't think the plan's ready at this point. The state law requires that we also adopt and create an implementation plan that will describe how this plan can, be actually implemented, that it's not just going to sit on a bookshelf somewhere. So we still need to develop that. So right now, our expected timeline is probably the next couple months. We'll work with the consultant team on the implementation chapter. We'll scrutinize it a little bit at the staff level and UTA and Wasatch Front, and then we'll come back probably sometime in July to the Planning Commission and ask you for a formal recommendation to the City Council, and then it'll go to the City Council late summer, fall of this year, and ask for an adoption from the City Council. As I mentioned 2 weeks ago, this one's a little bit different than most planning efforts we take on, in that once the City Council adopts the plan, there's an additional step that will require it to go to a certification board that's set up by, and this is based on the state law, that will involve the Wasatch Front Regional Council and the Utah Transit Authority. They'll review our plan and basically put their stamp of approval that yes, what Taylorsville produced meets those objectives and the intent of the state law. So this is going to be a little bit longer process than kind of a normal planning effort. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that helps address the number.
And then, as I also mentioned 2 weeks ago, it's our intent that when we adopt this, that it will be used as an addendum to our land use chapter in our general plan. So this will become part of our general plan.
Okay. I do have some more questions.
Yes, please continue.
So maybe because it's high level, we haven't got there yet, but I think a discussion of the north-south connectivity would be very helpful. How is that really going to be addressed? I'd like to see some of that, and so if that's included in a future effort, that would be good. I'm curious about examples from other places. As far as the design team goes, are there good case studies that can be used to help us here? How did those go? What was the success like, and what made it most successful?
We did look at different projects for best practices and best uses. Our firm was involved in the creation of Farmington Station many years ago, and we can look to that as an example. I think there's plenty of other national and local examples that we can look to. We find that our best communities are ones that are proactive about their development and their engagement with the community. So by utilizing the best principles of complete streets, connectivity, and remember these stationary plans are a quarter mile, which is a 5-minute walk. So these are rather dense, compact areas. They want to have a high degree of walkability and build value at the ground plane, which means that we're going to have great urban design guidelines for the buildings, how they meet the ground, how we enter the buildings, how we screen servicing, pedestrian access points, vehicular conflicts, and avoid all these things. And so that you find that if you have these things, you build value at the ground level, which is then repeated for all the stories that are above it, whether it's 5 stories or 3 stories for the residential. So we did have some other case studies that we had presented earlier in the community meeting we did last summer of different items and objects and stuff, and we'll continue to refine those things and cite those in the implementation plan when that comes out.
Okay. Mr. Young has a question.
Keep going, keep going.
Okay. So if you could point to one really good one that relates. So in my mind, I'm thinking Taylorsville, central part of the valley. It's fallen a little bit behind a lot of the other areas. Do you have some good case studies where you've gone in to something like that? Maybe a Peter Calthorpe example of some sort that you've looked at or participated in that you can point to and say, hey, Taylorsville, you can have success there. I'm curious if you have some examples of something like that.
I don't have any particular examples that stand out from the other ones we looked at right now, but that's something that we'll be citing in the implementation plan to kind of help guide that whole process.
Okay. In your mind, if you were to be asked right off the bat, what sets this plan apart? What makes it unique? What makes it a special place?
Well, I think some of the existing assets you have, such as the Jordan River Park and system, that really led to this idea of using the natural abilities and assets that you currently have and building upon those. And that this green park and wildlife corridor that connects the east to west, we think is a really compelling reason to connect the neighborhoods. And we think, a lot of places we ask for increased appropriate density, but we don't have something as tangible as this to give back to people. So we think this is a great way to balance attainable, appropriate density with the benefit of getting this really great green open space, which has been proven to be a huge asset in almost all the successful planned communities and things. So we think it's approximately 44 acres in the total development and stuff. So we think that in addition to all the pocket parks, really foster this collection of neighborhoods that have their own individual identity, but still communicate with each other.
And I think with some of the existing mature trees, like we look very closely across the area, and you can plant landscaping, and obviously that's an important component. But when you have something that's mature and has been there for decades, it's established, in the climate, things don't grow real quickly. So trying to take advantage of existing vegetation gives some established feel to the green space right from the beginning. And then what you plant comes along as well. But we think that's a unique opportunity. I think the other unique opportunity is, again, by having the BRT stations and the density around it and having an employment base, bringing in some retail, we think it's in a good location that also has the ability to buffer down to the surrounding lesser intensity residential uses. And so that combination of, for instance, on the golf course, having existing trees and green that provide some buffer from the adjacent neighbors is a unique opportunity for this particular site.
Because this project is fundamentally tied into private landowners, what kind of conversations have been had to date with those private landowners throughout this area?
Yeah, I mean, we have talked with a number of the property owners and stakeholders, and yeah, I mean, there's a lot of feedback right now that there isn't necessarily interest in turning the land and redeveloping it at this point in time, and that's understandable. Things may change over time. I think part of the vision of the city is to be ready when that occurs, because change inevitably occurs. There's economic things that are at work. Some of the larger parcels, manufactured home communities, they're zoned for manufactured home communities. So if they're going to be upzoned at some point in the future, potentially, having a plan that guides how that happens in a good design, thriving neighborhood standpoint is important. The Four Lakes is open space. So if it's going to be upzoned, there's a plan for it. And so, it's unique in the sense of there are a number of large properties that are all privately held. So we don't know how it's going to develop. But there's also an opportunity that there's some large parcels that if they do redevelop in a good, trajectory, then those become catalysts that support, there's a momentum aspect of you start with, as Aaron mentioned, a demonstration project to demonstrate that this type of community works in Taylorsville. And so there's incentives and, there's part of the implementation plan is to have strategies to encourage that. Can't force it to happen. So you're just trying to set the framework for it.
I always just said that I think this is on, the larger parcels mean that, there might be many years in which you see almost nothing change, which is different than if you had a lot of small parcels and so people could do a few little things over time, just because you had more different property owners and different opinions. But it also means that you actually have more ability to implement some of these large, grand gestures like the green spine and the parks and the connectivity. Because you aren't trying to do it across, 10 different property owners who all have slightly different ideas about where it should go and how their site might be configured. And so it actually is an opportunity, I think, to be able to really try to implement something like this with private property owners that you don't always get when you're doing a plan like this.
Thank you. I do have a couple of other questions and then maybe a comment. So one question, we want to get Great Basin involved here. What is a first level trigger that would necessitate additional infrastructure?
The capacities they're in are based on some planning that was done in 2019. Can you hear me? Okay. So some of the infrastructure that's been in and planned for was planned for in 2019, and upgrades to the system have happened. So when we talk about triggers, it depends on which portions of the site want to develop first and change. But if something was to design to go around, say, the mobile home area or the Atherton Place area, it could trigger a sewer upgrade and master planning that would go on there that could take, depending on the type of the development, it could take up to 3 years to implement and design that and get it built. But and then water service, of course, would be based on the number of units. So it all depends on more where things develop than a number maybe. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now, I have another question. I don't know if I want to take it, though. It's actually based on what you said, Don, the last time with respect to the historic district. Is that something you want to ask about? I don't want to steal it from you.
No, go ahead.
Okay, Don, this is Don's question from a couple of weeks ago, and I thought it was a fabulous idea, though. Our historic district south of this area is something that's notable within the community. If you can consider that somehow in this plan, I think there's a lot of value in you doing that. So that was that last question, comment. I do have one more comment to make, and that is...
Just to say, Dave, thanks for bringing that up. I can't remember what I had for breakfast, so thank you for thank you for reminding what I said in the last meeting.
I'd like to emphasize that I feel like the city has tried its best to be careful about all of the landowners, from those who live in the mobile home area to those who run Four Lakes. I think they've done a really good job of trying to bring everybody in. This is a difficult project to do, especially when there are so many feelings, so many ideas out there. I'm just again, I'm grateful for the city and what they've done to try to bring you guys here and give us fresh ideas and some nice thoughts here. So thank you, all of you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Wright. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Young, I believe you had one.
Or not right, excuse me, Young had some, I'll go after you. I'm letting you guys get through my whole list for me.
That's what I'm doing.
Okay, so obviously there's a lot of private properties that would have to come into play, but I was kind of thinking through it a step.
Can you make sure your microphone's turned on? Thank you.
Sorry. So, start again. Obviously, a lot of this is master planned in, for private properties, but looking at the BRT along 4700 South, there are plans to have sidewalks, bike paths, new landscaping, green space through there. Who's going to own that landscaping, and who will be maintaining it?
Can you turn your microphone on, Mark? So they can, thanks.
First, I wanted to talk about the trails specifically along 4700, or the sidewalks, bike paths, and any landscaping that would be there along 4700 South. And the secondary would be the linear.
Okay, well, the answer is the same to both. Our intent is that they will both be integrated into our citywide park system. So we'll be responsible for it, we'll maintain it.
Would that be true of Atherton and the improvements that were described with the potential landscaped island and parkways and sidewalks and such?
The landscape island, typically the adjacent property owner would be responsible for the park strip. So if there's landscaping and street trees in the park strip, that's something that we may have a conversation with about the city council. Do we want to get a little bit more proactive in terms of maintaining that? We'll probably get a lot better maintenance of our urban forests, our street trees, if we have a professional arborist kind of overseeing things rather than a million different property owners kind of taking care of things on their own kind of level of maintenance. That's really a conversation that we haven't had yet. But really anything in the public realm will be the responsibility of the city, except for maybe the park strips.
I kind of asked because as it currently exists, 4700 South, from Jordan River up through basically just west of 215 is UDOT property.
Yeah.
And they currently maintain that. Is that correct?
Well, I guess depends on what you mean by maintain.
Or lack thereof.
Yeah, it's currently it's UDOT property, that it's their corridor. We do have an agreement with them that typically UDOT doesn't want to get into a situation where they're maintaining landscaping. Their business is moving cars and moving people, and landscaping isn't kind of in their wheelhouse. So generally speaking, when you see a UDOT street landscaped or some type of improvements on the edge, they have some sort of an agreement with the local community to maintain that space.
Thank you. That's obviously a conversation to have with the council as to how that's done and what's maintained, et cetera. Thank you. I appreciate that. So the secondary is a big if. That would require the what would you call it, the ribbon park?
The linear park?
Linear park, thank you. It's going east-west along the southern side of 47th down to Jordan River. That would be if there was a developer that wanted to redevelop those areas and the property owners were willing to do that type of thing. In that event, who would own those parks?
It would be a city park.
Rather than doing a plan unit development or something like that and asking the developer and the residents to pay for that and maintain it, like Daybreak?
Yeah, in all likelihood, it will be a city park. It will be, again, just integrated into our citywide park system.
Thank you. Okay. I guess getting more on the practical and BRT directly at the stations, are we anticipating traffic lights or any kind of traffic control related to those?
Yes. I didn't mean to jump in, but we are anticipating traffic light as well as pedestrian crossings that are kind of safely monitored, so that there would be like dedicated pedestrian crossings so that cars aren't trying to make a right turn on red or something in conflict with the crossing. And so safety would certainly be the first concern from a pedestrian standpoint.
So thinking through those, we've got the Eastern Atherton where it comes on, there's an existing light there. Are we looking at maintaining that light and adjusting things a little bit, or are we looking at adding additional?
Let me
traffic.
address that one. Okay, because of the width of 4700 South and the BRT being center running in that area, you'll likely have dual traffic controls where you'll push it and stop the eastbound, and then those people getting either crossing the road or getting off the BRT would push another signal to stop the west signal or westbound traffic, thereby going through making sure that everything is done safer. It's too wide and it would block traffic too much if you pushed it and had a 60-second cross rather than going through and having, say, for 35 and 35 second. That's all being designed within the BRT now to make sure it's safe and regulated for all people who are using it.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Extending that a little bit further at 1175 West to 1300 West. Are we talking about access in and out of those neighborhoods or additional stoplights?
The traffic control will be, from what I've seen on the plans, will be the same on all three of those signals.
In 1300, I think. In terms of, yeah, not 1175, but 1300. And I think there's still discussion ongoing in terms of, at a minimum, I think 1300, you would want pedestrian access, a little linear park that connects to the neighborhood to the north. Whether there's vehicular access to the north is something that I think is still being discussed.
It's currently not there, and I know people are asking those questions, that's why.
It's currently not there. It would make sense from a pedestrian standpoint that the stable neighborhood to the northwest could walk to the BRT, whether or not there's vehicular at this, but there would be a traffic signal there.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Young. Commissioner Wendell, I think you're going for your light.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you to my fellow commissioners for asking probably 89–92% of what I had in my mind. But thank you for the work to our staff, to the design team, everybody who is contributing to this, because what we do know, as Mark's first slide show, when we look what happened over the last 40 years, our community was basically put in a position that we could thrive or we could blight. And doing nothing means we blight. Doing something means we will thrive. I am very happy to see that our single-family home neighborhoods are going to be able to preserve their characteristic of their neighborhood and still maintain the lifestyle that they're used to, as well as accommodate for a proactive urbanization of our area. Because where we are geographically, there's no way, I mean, we're going to urbanize whether we want to or not, right? And that is what we're seeing happen. So to do it in a very proactive way is wonderful. But my question is to put Senator Harper in the hot seat because we do know that a lot of this is being done through state legislation, right? Our station area plan requirements, and there would be consequences should the city not have this available. What are some of the resources or opportunities that are coming from the state to help us make this vision a reality?
There are multiple things. There's funding that was made available. There's time, and for example, if you go into Salt Lake City, they have dozens of these stations, and so it's not you have to do it right now. You have to do a certain number each year, and they're being pretty proactive. Wasatch Front Regional Council has funding, the state's authorized funding. There's also different resources and consulting groups that you can use. States got affordable housing and some other groups that stand ready to help. So there's a bunch of resources that are out there.
My other concern would be in talking about how we're preserving our single-family home neighborhoods, but we would be displacing potentially other residents in our manufactured home communities, because that's a large portion of what exists to the south. What do we see happening right now in areas that are making those transitions? How do we keep those residents of Taylorsville, but maybe in a different format? As David was asking for some success stories, what could we hope to see in that transition when that time comes? I'm not sure who's best to answer that question. Yeah, the manufactured home communities.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. And, you know, there are 3 properties that, again, they're privately owned. We really have no control over if and when those property owners choose to transition the land use to something else. Right now, our intent is that if they do transition into something else, we've articulated in our mind, you know, what our vision is for those areas, so that they will redevelop in a way that makes sense and is congruent with the surroundings. As far as relocation goes, we don't know right now, because we don't know, will the property owner try to transition the entire park? Will they do it in phases? But the way I think right now the best tool we have to address it is we plan on having our zoning strategy to utilize the SSD zoning classification, which by code requires that we have a development agreement along with the new zoning code. So we will be able to negotiate with the property owner through that development agreement a strategy for relocation. It could be just like doing it in phases, and so we don't have as many people relocated, you know, at the same time. Or we may figure out receiving zones, or we may figure out ways where they can relocate on the same property, just, you know, in a newer unit. It's just impossible to say at this point, not knowing if and when or how they're going to transition. Do you guys have anything to add to that?
I'll just add that this is a challenge faced in every community that has mobile home and manufactured home communities, because those residents are at risk of displacement because they don't own the land. The build first strategy, so trying to make sure that there's some new housing available so that existing residents have somewhere in the community to move into before they have to leave their existing home, is thought of as one of the best practices. It's hard to accomplish unless you can do it on site, because there isn't always an obvious receiving zone. You know, I think one of the things we learned through this process is that, you know, not all, but many of the residents of the mobile home communities are older, you know, maybe not necessarily ready to move out of their home, but that actually is easier if you're dealing with a senior population than if you're dealing with large multi-generational families, which are sometimes the residents of those types of communities, because single older adults, in fact, may fit well with retirement communities or other types of multifamily housing that allow them to have a single level living and less maintenance. And so being able to think about some of the different new housing products that are proposed in this area, you know, could very well be geared towards an older population or towards some of the residents, so that, you know, we get out ahead of you know, the potential displacement and create opportunities for those residents to move within the community when they need different housing or need different services. And I think the last thing that we see people considering and cities considering is opportunities to bring partnerships to the table, either with you know, local housing authority resources or with nonprofit developers. You know, groups like Habitat for Humanity have been trying to put national resources behind their local chapters to you know, help in situations like this, where, you know, a Habitat affiliate could come into some of these communities and work with the new developer and the landowner to think about how these properties develop in a way that tries to maintain as many of these residents within the community as possible. And so, you know, Mark is right that it's very difficult to say exactly how this will play out, because we don't know, you know, when or in what ways some of these existing owners will want to redevelop, and that has a really big impact on, you know, what strategies and what tactics are going to be most effective at making sure we don't displace, you know, the residents that are here today.
Madam Chair, could I just add one quick
please,
comment?
Mr.
So I
Shaw.
appreciate the question, Commissioner Wendell. I think it's an important one, and, you know, kind of the gorilla in the room of, you know, where do these people go? One thing that we've been discussing internally is to, you know, with the SSD zone, to somehow incorporate in with a development agreement some minimum level of affordable housing requirement as part of these new projects, to say, you know, at least 15% of the new units in this area have to meet some level of affordability. And the crisis we're in right now is pretty staggering. According to HUD, the Federal Housing Urban Development Department, in Salt Lake County, a family of 4 that has a household income of $100,000 is considered low income. So it's not, those making $10,000, $20,000 a year. It's a 6-figure income is considered low income in much of the county. So, figuring out ways to partner with developers and other financing resources to somehow subsidize the rents or the cost of living in some of these areas will be important. Ways you can do that is leveraging higher densities to help, offset the cost of development, reducing parking requirements. So all those things will come later in the discussion, but it's definitely in the forefront of our minds is to figure out, how to best strategize to minimize the impact.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And again, what we understand is this is a master plan. It's a vision, a guiding document. It's not a site plan. So I think I'm good with my questions for now. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Quigley, I believe you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be brief because actually I'm really looking forward to hear what some of these people have to say here tonight. But there's just a couple of things I want to make a comment on. Number one, I want to give you kudos for coming tonight. I just did some quick math in my head, and we sent out over 1,300 notices, and you're less than 2%. So thank you for taking the time to come. It's one of the frustrating things of government and public hearings and so forth. Everybody wants to criticize what's going on over at City Hall, but you took the time to come and find and learn, and I hope this will be beneficial, and I would encourage you that you take this information back to your neighborhoods and maybe qualm some of the concerns or questions, or even or bring to light some of the questions and concerns that you might have. I want to give kudos to Mark again for his great job in leading this group, and Jim, also our city planner. I want to go on a record. I am pro Jordan River. To my esteemed Mr. Wright, I think he's just making my comments because a little while ago I made the comment that I thought the Jordan River was is not the. I think what I said was it's not the primary jewel of the city. It's an integral piece, and I'm glad that we're incorporating into it. I think that's great. Matter of fact, that's one of the things I like about this is that we're forming a gateway to the Jordan River. Me personally, I think over time the state of Utah and the Jordan River Commission are going to primarily take care of that piece and protect it, but we as Taylorsville want to make sure that we incorporate in our planning. So I just want to reconfirm a couple of things. Also, I want to make a comment that I think sometimes we get confused with the word progressive and proactive. I think what we're doing here is being proactive. I think that's what the state is doing, is being proactive. We can they say if you're standing still, you're going backwards if everybody else is moving forward. And we can either stand by, as Commissioner Wendell mentioned earlier, we can go from moving forward or just letting our city, be dealt with that. And you've come up with some great plans. And I think the underlying theme here tonight is that this is a vision. But really the ultimate decision is going to be left to the private property owners. And so one of the questions I want to just reconfirm, because I haven't heard the actual word tonight, but nothing in this plan includes eminent domain, correct? Yeah. I mean, that's always a scary word when you have developers come in and big plans and master plans to private property owners. But the second thing I wanted to confirm is that this is just that, a master plan. We're trying to have a vision so we know where to go, but there's nothing directing this currently, and I would probably put this, I don't know, maybe our city planner. I mean, there's nothing that the city is privy to with a private developer or something that said, hey, this is what we want to do, so direct it. This is our vision. Is that correct?
Yeah, and the consulting team has mentioned that they've spoken with all the property owners or a lot
Right.
of the major stakeholders, but the city's intent with this whole plan is, like you said, to be proactive, to where if one of these large properties does sell and the new owner approaches the city and says, hey, I've got this plan, you know, the city has a response to say, that's great. You know, 5 years ago, we adopted a vision for this area, and this is what we think. And it starts the conversation on the city's terms and the community's terms, rather than the terms of some future developer. So.
Thank you, Jim. I just wanted to get that entered the record. And then finally, the last thing I wanted to mention is that I appreciate the fact that there's an emphasis on that impacting that existing single family, particularly in one of the zones that we saw there on the north side of 47th between, I guess, about 1175 West and Redwood Road. There's nothing in this plan that is looking to tear down those single family homes and put in high density. Again, then I just want to finish them by complimenting you. I mean, I totally get what you're talking about is connecting the pearls. I mean, this is a 5 to 25 year project, like you say, and you got to start somewhere. And hopefully, with a master plan, at some point in time, you know, it can come together the way we'd like to see it. But I appreciate all the work that's been done, and I'm eager to hear some comment from our citizens that took the time to come out. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you.
I salute those who've had a laboring oar in the master plan. Very well done, good homework. I guess my question, although the area of focus tonight is the 3 stops in the area along the expressway there, how does this all fit in the neighboring areas, you know, like the bus stop on each, to the east and to the west, and just the overall plan? Is this an easy fit? Is it a complicated fit? Is it, guess I'm looking to see whether we're looking at it to be more seamless or not.
So how will this new development relate to the existing development kind of outside its
Yeah,
borders?
on both ends,
Yeah, that's something that we gave a lot of attention to, making sure that there's, you know, there is a lot of multifamily development proposed in the plan. We wanted to make sure that those densities were stepped down as you got closer to existing single-family neighborhoods, and so that you didn't have like a 5-story or 7-story building right next to a single-family house, as you've seen elsewhere in the valley with some of this multifamily development. I don't know if you guys want to add to that answer, but yes, we did give a tremendous amount of attention to how this area will relate to the surrounding community.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Willardson, anything?
Not a thing.
Okay, good. Well, I've just got a couple questions. I believe, Bob, you said this is 44 acres that we're playing with and trying to push down. I don't know if you have it available today, but wondered if we could see how many acres is dedicated to that high density, the 5 to 6 story buildings, how many to the 3-story, so on and so forth. I think that would be interesting to see. Also, as I kind of go through this idea of moving from where we are today to where we want to be in the future, the part where I always get stuck is when we're part way there, we have the stations, but where are people going to park? And then it makes me think, did I even see parking on that final vision? And I don't remember if I did see any parking. Parallel parking on the street, was that the only?
There is a combination of surface lots, structured parking, and parking on the streets. Currently, there is no dedicated parking that's being built by the BRT station. There are talks about having shared parking agreements where the BRT would have the rights and the abilities to have a cross-parking agreement with private developers as a way to provide parking assistance for those people that maybe need to get to the the BRT station that can't walk there.
Okay.
Because it's a 5-minute radius,
Yeah.
there's been a focus on walkability, but there may be some elderly people or other people that we need to make accommodations for that could be accommodated in some of this private development through shared parking.
Okay. Do you think as we go forward, we need to have a little bit more thought around parking, especially in the buildup?
It was talked about earlier with the various stakeholders, and the idea was to really try to get people to walk to it. There was concerns about some of the neighborhoods, about people parking in their neighborhood. And I think a lot of those fears were alleviated, but there are some remaining details that I think could bring some validity to it. Also, this could be a potential way that UDOT could help be a catalyst in some of these developments by offering to participate in some form or fashion in one of these cross-parking agreements with a private developer. So I think there's potential to discover that more. And in fact, that's something we talked about today in an earlier meeting on a private basis.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner, to add to that as well, we have had as a city discussions with UTA about potentially doing a circulator bus that would run all through that area and pick up people and take them to the BRT stations, rather than having to have people drive 5 or 10 minutes, park somewhere, and then walk. Circulator bus might be the most efficient thing to use in that area.
Great, thank you.
It's a great idea.
Yeah,
Can I just
it-
add to that a bit as well? So as you looked at that site plan, you know, as you kind of indicated, you saw very little parking, and that's really by design. We're trying to create an active, vibrant place, and there's nothing that kills an environment like that than a surface parking lot. And so although there's parking throughout, it's de-emphasized and it's hidden so that it doesn't kind of, destroy that character that, the character that we're going for in the area. So, I mean, there is parking. We recognize the fact that this is an automobile-oriented society. We just want to de-emphasize that a little bit. And this was, as Bob mentioned, we're kind of turning things the way we usually do things on our heads a little bit, and emphasizing the pedestrian and de-emphasizing the automobile a little bit, and making this a more walkable community. As I think I've mentioned a couple times previously, as we've been talking about our community-wide general plan, the one comment I hear more than any other single comment is we want more trails. We want the ability to get outside in our community and experience our community outside. And the way the community's kind of put together right now, it's so auto-oriented that people just don't feel comfortable outside walking. This project, this plan, this area just addresses that, head on. We want to make a high-quality walkable area here, and one of the things you do to achieve that is you de-emphasize parking and de-emphasize the automobile.
Yeah, very good comments, I appreciate that. I just think in year 15 of this plan, when we're still an auto society and we're not as used to walking, where we have a place, but no, I appreciate the responses.
And then also, we're also trying to create a community where it's easy to use transit, where you can walk to transit, and we give the ability to people, a couple or a family to be a one-car family, and they can utilize the transit more, and that will enable people to afford, a higher level of housing if they're not paying for extra auto insurance and extra car payments, and so on.
Great.
And then also, when you look at those population projections, and there's a 500,000 more people coming to the county, if we don't figure out a way to get people utilizing transit and using active transportation more, that means we're also going to have a 500,000 people worth of cars as well, and traffic. So we need to figure out ways to get people off the road, still moving, but getting them off the road.
Yeah, very good point. Yes.
To add to that, I think I'm feeling very empathetic towards your question, in the sense that when I want to take public transportation, I have to drive 4 miles to get to tracks.
Yeah.
So my sense is you've had the same
Yeah,
experience.
exactly.
We feel that we cannot connect to public transportation in a walkable space, and I think the vast majority of riders are going to be within that walkable space.
Yeah.
And for those of us who aren't in that space, we'll probably still be just driving to the light rail station. and
Exactly,
working
yeah.
there.
Very good point. Exactly our experience
And
today.
that increase of the east-west little parkways, and like you said, that east-west connection is what we talk about all the time in Taylorsville, right? Is
Yeah.
You could get north-south, but you can't go east-west. So to have that active transportation opportunity, that quarter to a half-mile connection, shuttle is a great idea. I've always said we need to do that for Taylorsville days instead of having people come and park
Excellent. Hey, thank you. It's now time to close our discussion. I think the part that we really want to do is to hear from our citizens. So I'm going to remind you that you're to step to the mic. If you're just representing it yourself, 2 minutes, keep it very concise. If you're representing a group, you have 5 minutes. When you step to the mic, please identify yourself with your name, and if you're a Taylorsville resident, remember that this is not a dialogue, so you may be a little bit frustrated because we're all going to be heads down making notes on what your issues and concerns are, but not necessarily dialoguing with you. So I'm going to open the public meeting and see if anyone wants to speak. Please come to the mic.
Hello, I'm Dennis Sanok. I'm representing a group of citizens on Ebony Avenue, which is part of this zone. First off, I'm thrilled to hear that the Planning Commission are all residents of Taylorsville. I encourage you to get out and see the rest of Taylorsville besides where you live, so you know what the speed limit is on the Expressway or the freeway. It is a freeway, it's 50 miles per hour, and it usually stays under 60, which is good. And I've got some notes, so I've got to yeah, all right. 1B, you are the residents. I mean, for this, I'm going to talk to the board first. You are the residents. You have the power to recommend what makes sense for Taylorsville. I think the consultants did a fabulous job today. It's a great presentation. I think it looks really good overall. Some of our staff does a great job. Not everyone lives or is a resident of the city of Taylorsville, but you are the gatekeepers of what goes to city council for approval. So I ask you to do what makes sense for the city. With that, Taylorsville isn't all highly conservative. Taylorsville is a melting pot of people. The highly conservative numbers for the city of Taylorsville in the last census and the polling powers, that's a heavy conservative, is only 50% around that, 40-something, 50%. It's being more of a melting pot year after year. So let's, as we all have our conservative tendencies, let's remember that we're here for everyone, not just your area or what you believe in. So second part, roads. I'd like to just make a comment. Yeah, it's 2 lanes in each direction, plus the BRT lanes in the centers for 47th South. I do see, if you vision 20 years from now, do we need an additional lane in each direction? I would say yes. That should be part of the master plan, to include an additional lane in each direction on 47th South. It is a freeway. It is meant and intended to be at 50 miles per hour so people can go east-west in a more timely fashion than just 35 miles per hour. Fourth, new housing north of 47th. I was surprised. I'm just going to make the comment. It's just a comment. I was surprised I didn't see more new housing development planned for north of 47th South. Not to say that we need more or less. I was just surprised that part of that research park area wasn't deemed more heavily dense in housing. I do agree with Mr. Sprung on the percentages that are for low-income housing. And the state recommends 10%. We can set it for whatever we want in the city of Taylorsville. We can set it higher than 10%. But that sounds like a great opportunity for the mobile home communities, so they can stay off the streets and not become homeless. That's their alternative. If we don't provide housing that's an affordable means for our mobile home communities, we're going to lose them. They're going to hit the streets. There's a reason they're there. Even with the increases in the rental properties at the mobile home communities, which I think it's upping towards $1,000 now a month, from $350 about 10 years ago, $350 a month. These aren't our richest residents in Taylorsville. So getting a percentage that are lower income that they could move into as a priority, as opposed to others trying to rent low income properties, would be a great way. That I already talked about reduced speed. 6. Oh, privately owned. Keep on hearing this thrown around. Privately owned, privately owned. Hey, we're just planting for the future. This is privately owned. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen next month. But part of the master plan is once it's approved, the next steps are to set the regulations and set the zoning. The regulations for sure, and I'm assuming that includes the zoning. That's the next steps to be to abide by what the state HB 462 had said. So it's not, and if you build it, they will. What did that baseball movie say? If you build it, they will come. If you regulate for it, somebody's going to come and take away Four Lakes Golf Course. You know, as the golfer, it's like, I don't go to Four Lakes very often, but I know a lot of people that do, and the parking lot's always full. You know, that's a gem as well in the city of Taylorsville. One sec. Master plan, if we don't have to approve this, have a master plan until 2026. I would say let's not rush into the approval. Let's not rush into sending this to City Hall for approval. I'd like to see it be January 2026 for approval. See who the mayor is and the city council is at that time. Maybe it'll get more diverse than it is today. And with that, I thank you for your time. Appreciate you listening and having this session. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Please.
So my name is Olga Christiansen, and I'm Taylorsville resident, and my condo is on Four Lakes Golf Course, and it's like you said, it's a beautiful green space. There's a lot of trees. Lots of people are using it. It's always full. It has a lot of sentimental value. It's like just amazing piece of nature, like in the urban area. So is there any way to maybe to oppose to this master plan or to protest it, to keep that amazing area, you know, for the residents, instead of just rebuilding it and losing the green space? That's my question. Is there, or you guys just decide and that becomes the law?
What you're providing, the information you're providing tonight is exactly what we want, because we have the right people in the room to hear what the citizens want. So we can't make a commitment tonight, of course, but they're hearing that you really value Four Lakes, and it's got,
yeah,
it's got valuable. So the right people are listening.
Area.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Thank you.
My name's Paul Conlon. I guess I'm part of the Ebony Coalition, and I'm a neighbor of Brother Young, or Mr. Young, and Mr. Quigley. I'd say the proposed plan is chaos. It's going to just blow the whole thing up and hope the pieces fall back into place, and we'll make sense of it someday. Reminds me of some restructuring plans we had when I was in business. But sometimes you have to go through little bit of pain or a lot of pain to get things back where they belong and right. And I think it's a good plan in a long-term sort of way. It's not something that should be done immediately. And on that, I would agree with Mr. Sanek. As far as Brother Young, or Mr. Young brought up a point about maintenance and along 4700 South, and UDOT will do the roads. I like to ride my bike all over the valley and up and down the Jordan River Parkway. And Taylorsville is not a safe place to ride. The parkway isn't maintained. It is in Murray and it is in Salt Lake, but it's not maintained. And same with public roads or sidewalks, not residential sidewalks, but public sidewalks aren't always cleared in the winter. Or and other times you're riding along a busy highway where you really, one slip and you're taking your life into your own hands, like Redwood Road. For 27th South or 2700 West does have a bike lane, but it's still a busy road. It's like riding on a bike lane on State Street. Anyway, I think it's a good plan, but it will take time. And on the 13th West Terminal, I propose that it stays closed to vehicular traffic, just so that there are not more cars going in and out of the neighborhood. It kind of dead ends at that point anyway. But I think it would be great to have pedestrian access, because we, as Ms. Wendell said, I've had to drive a half an hour to get to the Red Clay or Fire Clay bus station to get on tracks, and a half hour back the other way, where it would have taken me half an hour to drive to the hospital and back to the University of Utah. So it would be great to have public transportation for a change, where we have never had it. And with that, I'll wish you a good night.
Thank you so much.
Hello, Johnny Prettyman. I live on 13th West, and I really like the plan myself. What I don't like, and I didn't exactly hear, but I did hear some things about 13th West, about keeping it a walkable station, which I would like to do as well. I don't want 13th West to open up. I agree, more cars in the neighborhood is a bad thing, and that would really open up that road to lots of traffic as it continues. And 13th goes a long way north, and opening that up would just create so much traffic in the neighborhood. And I think Atherton already covers that. And the plan that I think I saw, it would use Atherton as that main road through the community, and that's what I would like. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks. Excuse me, Madam Chair. Can I just clarify what you, so you are supportive of keeping 13th West open for pedestrian, but not cars? Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Thank you.
My name's Clarence Fields. I'm a resident of Taylorsville. The cost that I'm concerned with is the cost of water. We're not going to stop the 500,000 to 1 million people that are going to be moving in the next little while. They've got the priority. The parks that you guys have planned, great. What's the cost of water? Are we just going to have a bunch of brown spaces? I just think that the cost of water needs to be calculated into this. I mean, you got the cost of land, all this other stuff. But what about water? We are a desert. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, please.
I'm David Vernon. I'm the Associate Vice President for USU, and I'm in Sorensen Research Park. I'm excited to see the development of master plan. We're at 920 Lavoie. I'm just excited to see that there's this development. I think having amenities, along the 4700 South, I think would be great. And the Sorensen Research Park is kind of desolate right now after COVID, and it'd be nice to have more businesses there. Worked with Senator Harper to engage the community, and try to, and so with this development, I think it'd be really nice to see.
Great, thank you, and go USU. Okay, anyone else? A lot of you have really stuck it out. No one else? Okay, with that, I'll close the public meeting. Planning Commission, I'm going to open it up one more time to any of us based on the things that we've heard.
I would give one comment, if I may. having taken the UTA BRT system along 3500 West or 3500 South several dozen times, it's not a bad system. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And same thing on the Orem-Provo connector. Not perfect, but it's a pretty slick, pretty good system. So I think all in all, this can, with time, be a boon for everybody.
I'd like to just make one comment.
Commissioner Quigley.
Being I am a resident close to 1300 West, and I didn't see this on the plan, but it looked kind of like it. But I agree 100% with your making 13th West solely pedestrian. And I'm just wondering if we couldn't emphasize on that plan, because everything you showed, you don't really show anything in that one area that's single family. I'd love to see that be designed as a little pocket park with a wandering pathway through that, so that it's memorialized as pedestrian only and not something that potentially down the road could be open to vehicular traffic. Could we do that?
Yeah, I mean, we, in some of our drawings, we have put green color kind
Great.
of in that place between. I think part of it, we're going to need some direction, because we know that there's some discussion happening about it. But I think having a little linear park there that connects would work really well. We're going to need some direction, a bigger conversation in terms of the transportation aspect of it. But I agree with you that would be a nice way to connect the pedestrian.
Thank you. Jim, it is a city street, isn't it? And it's dedicated as a city street, so I would think the city could convert it to something other than a street. I don't know. I know UDOT might have its rules, but right now they're not using it as access. So
Yeah, I'd have to look at the code. I know that there's a provision in state law that says if the city vacates right-of-way, that the land automatically reverts to the adjacent owners. So the city would probably have to maintain it as right-of-way, but make improvements to be pedestrian. So
Okay.
we could talk through that more.
Great.
Yeah.
Did I see you leaning towards the microphone?
Yeah, we were waiting for you to comment, but I'll
All right.
keep going.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Other commissioners?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say a fabulous.
Can you make sure?
Yep, I got it, Jim. I wanted to say fabulous comments from the public. Thank you so much for coming. And again, this is a master plan, so it doesn't have the details for water as you discussed, or safety as you discussed. So please make sure you keep an eye on public notices over the next few years to see when we might be hearing more specific site plan ideas, so that you can come back and give your feedback based on those details at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wendell. I look to my right. Commissioners?
I've got appreciate. I was going to echo the comments that were made about a kind of a regional park kind of thing there at 1300 West that's currently got a road, but if that could be vacated. So appreciate those comments there. That'd be wonderful. Not discussed, and it's just outside of this, is we've got Settlers Point that currently allows for left out of Settlers Point. How would that interface with BRT? Would we be able to do that, or would that have to be restricted to a right only?
There we go, I got it. That, Commissioner, is a really good question. The center lane ends just about 4 Lakes, and the BRT vehicles will shift to the right so that they can go through and turn onto Redwood Road and go up to Salt Lake Community College up on the Conifer X entrance right there, interchange. I have seen some of those plans, but I have not seen the final one, so I can't tell you if there's going to be a median there or not. We'll get back with you on that, because I just don't remember at this point.
Thank
We've
you.
been focused much more on the center running and everything to the east.
I guess an extension is there's currently a bus stop on the north side, or directly across from that. Then we see residents running across the road and creating a safety issue.
Yeah.
Would BRT maybe potentially move that or eliminate that?
Yes, that stop will be moved based on the current plan for the BRT, yes. So it'll be moved and it will be made safer.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Young. Commissioners, anyone else? Well, I think we've had a fabulous meeting. I think we've had wonderful presentations. Thank you to Mark, thank you to our team over here at the table. Especially thank you to our residents who care enough to come and to speak, so we appreciate it. As you know, this is not a motion to pass along to the city council at this point, but just a motion to continue our discussion. So I'm going to ask one of my commissioners to provide a motion.
You know, I'll jump on it if nobody does in the first 3 seconds.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I move that we continue the discussion regarding the Taylorsville Expressway Station Area Master Plan to a future date. I don't think yet determined, probably July. Staff will inform us.
Great, thank you. We have a motion?
Second.
And we have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And with that, we get to adjourn. Wait. Okay, I think we're done with everything on the agenda.
Madam Chair, can I make a
Yes,
final
please.
comment? Again, I want to appreciate the commission, my colleagues here, and everybody in the public who has, weighed in on this. The water issue is very critical. The not losing what you have is very critical. I want to be patently clear on this fact here. We are doing this as a long-term vision. It is not the city's intent to go through and encourage anybody to change the use of their property right now. We want you to continue to go through and be involved with this. We have put all of these key displays up on the second floor. If you want to come in and look at the display board, talk to anybody in the staff, you can do that. I would encourage anybody who is in the room here or online to go through and call us or email us. We still will have a couple more meetings on this as the plan gets wrapped up and finalized. This, to me, is really important that we see many people here, and we've got more people online. We need everybody's input so this is done right. But this is something that weighs heavily on us to make sure that the property rights are respected and people can do what they want to with their property with the current zoning and that. And if they so choose, there's a vision out there that we can work on. But that's what we're doing, is creating kind of something general for the future.
Excellent. Thank you, Senator Harper. With that, I'll...
By the way, in this
Yes.
room,
Yeah?
I'm Wayne Harper, Economic Development Director.
Okay. We'll change Wayne Harper, Economic Development. Okay.
I
with that-
like Brother Harper. Madam Chair, I would make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned.